It's a book that tells the story of Laxmi's parents, I. Tendulkar and Indumati Gunaji, and their unusual marriage in the time of Hitler and in the time of Gandhi. This is a book that tells a love story and a story of history which runs between two countries, two continents, between Europe and India, specifically Germany and Maharashtra. I. Tendulkar, Laxmi's father, went to Germany in the 1920s to study, and while there, met the filmmaker Fritz Lang and his wife Thea von Harbu, with whom he fell in love and whom he later married. And then he left Germany to come back to India to join Gandhi's campaign and became involved with the woman who was to become Laxmi's mother and became involved with Gandhi. Both of them were Gandhian activists, and it's the story of this relationship and the relationship that the two women developed because they were both in love with the same man. When Fritz Lang had to leave Germany because he was suspected of having Jewish ancestry, Thea von Harbu stayed behind. She and I. Tendulkar married, but they didn't really marry because at that time in Germany, Germans could not marry non-Germans. So they lived together for about 7 years, and when things became uncomfortable for Indian students in Germany because of the growing pressure of Nazis on foreigners, he left for India.
Lived in India all my life. I grew up on stories about Germany, and the person whose name was mentioned all the time was Thea von Harbu.
A lot of people who are cinephiles know that Thea von Harbu and Fritz Lang had made these wonderful films, Metropolis, Der Nibelungen, Der Muda Tod, etc. Metropolis was the first science fiction movie that ever was made. So people know Thea von Harbu for these movies. But they don't know what happened to Thea von Harbu after the war started. And they don't know that she actually helped a lot of Indians that were stranded in Berlin. When my parents got married, Gandhiji put various constrictions on their marriage. And the reason why he did this is because my mother supposedly lived in sin with a married man. She came from a very strict Brahmin family in a small place called Belgaum. And my grandfather knew Gandhiji, so when the war started and my father it was a political détenu in the prison, my grandfather wrote to Gandhiji, he put some sense in the silly girl and tell her to come home. But one of the letters that Gandhiji has written and which is in the book is these conditions that were put when finally they did get married. And in this letter, one of the conditions was she had to give her word that she would not have children till independence. In another letter, Gandhiji writes, Beta, you have given me your word that you would not have children to independence. But what will happen if we don't get independence? I think this one sentence absolutely shook me. Because my parents got married in 45, so the letter was written early 44. This statement sort of gave me an idea that maybe our freedom fighters and our leaders were not as confident, or not confident that we would get freedom or we would come where we are.
And it was Gandhi who married them after considerable discussion about whether he could marry two Brahmins or not, because by the time they came to be married, he had sworn only to marry Dalits. The amazing thing is that when they wanted to marry, the families were against it. That's not amazing because he was a much married man. But they wrote to Gandhi, and Gandhi actually, in the midst of all the things he was dealing with, took the time to involve himself in the marriage of these two people and advise them on whether or not they should marry, and tell them that they should, instead of marrying, the purpose of marriage was procreation, and they should actually first serve the nation, then procreate, and during that time, stay celibate. The two women, wife number 3 and wife number 4, meet, and they get along like a house on fire because they're both in love with this man, this very unusual man who is much married, and whose picture Thea von Harbu had on her wall all the time, along with the picture of the other man she admired, who was Adolf Hitler.
And I think the book is positioned in a very focused manner only because it captures the paradox that not only Gandhi lived with in India, but which Hitler left behind as a legacy of hatred in Germany. It is romance that brewed across continents, but where the protagonist, I. Tendulkar, was the common thread, understanding, appreciating the nuances of not just a Western versus an Eastern culture, but more importantly, of his own commitment to a vast student community that wanted to go to Germany, which was then thwarted by Adolf Hitler's accession to power. Very few books capture romance through the corridors of history. Very few books are able to conjoin history, contemporary history, with relevant issues at that particular time, and then still manage to weave an effective story. I think what Laxmi has done is remarkable. Many biographies of parents written by children become tributes in absentia. Children like to believe what they think of their parents through these biographies. But I think where Laxmi transcends that common mold is she's able to explain to people the dilemmas of romance when it is captured in contrast with a severe call of nationalism.